And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Shaping Success Wednesday edition morning coffee with Robert Watson. As we are cruising through his book, we are on Maxim 13 called Media. Robert, how are you doing?
I am wonderful. I'm wearing the new 2.0 shirt, which now has
Oh,
Ars Victorious non sin perculorio, which means the art of victory, not without danger.
not without danger. I too
Not
live
without
dangerously.
danger. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Book's been out for what, a couple weeks now?
It has.
How's that doing? How's the sales going? You getting it out there?
Yeah, it seems to be. I seem to be making progress, which I'm pleased.
Very good. It's
So,
kind of cool to see the art of your work of art moving. I'm assuming it's like we've been waiting for this for a very long time, so it's very cool.
did you see Nikki's comment?
Yeah, I think I said that too. I was like, "Oh, my middle name is Danger." Little Austin Powers in the house.
There we go.
Yeah, we got both Michelle and Nikki in the chat room. You guys can go ahead and feel free to chime in. We will get to questions if you have them. It's interesting. I had to chuckle this morning when I looked at the first couple lines of this. On July 4th, 1980, I visited New York on a weekend furlough from my Army basic training. Okay, so you know where I was on July 4th, 1980?
Not conceived yet.
Still cooking. I was in the oven. So it's funny to think about this, and I didn't really, like we don't, like this generation of mine, like 1980. Obviously you were just getting done. I was still, my mom was working on making me. I was still, I was born in December of 1980, so I was about 6 months away. But it's kind of crazy how you were just finishing this basic training. And, one of the things that I thought was very interesting, and I didn't really think about because I wasn't around, but people were not very happy with the military at this point in time.
No, it was a time when the American public blamed the military for being an instrument of the government in Vietnam, as if a conscription army had a choice,
Right.
right? And that's what they forget. They keep thinking in terms, especially this generation, thinks in terms of a volunteer army. We weren't volunteers. Well, I was, but the people that served in Vietnam largely were not.
Yeah.
They largely were conscripted and were forced to go spend a wonderful year and especially when they were conscripted, they almost universally got to spend a lovely year in Vietnam.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy. Like I have to tell you that like I think that the duty of wanting to serve in the military was like before that, like it was actually like something that people were really proud to do. Like they'd go and do it, and then I feel like this probably took it, made it like the people who did it, like yourself that volunteered to do it, made you feel like you were doing your country a great service, but they didn't think so. And I myself was like scared to join the military. And like when you turn 18, you have to fill out this paperwork that says that if there is a draft, which is what happened, like these people were drafted and told they had to go. I was worried that they're going to make me do it. And, a couple of years later, after I graduated high school, Desert Storm started, and they thought, well, here we go again.
Yeah, it's a very strange world because I existed in between when you couldn't put in a job application without saying where you served, which was you were World War II or Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning if you didn't serve, it was kind of what was wrong with you. Well, Vietnam, of course, shifted all that. And so what you saw was people putting resumes out who served in Vietnam and they just put Army or not at all
Right.
because they didn't want to identify because it was such a stigma associated with. And these people were not. They were volunteers to the extent that they were trying to control their entry into Vietnam, meaning they were officers who went to West Point or A&M, and they were trying to avoid the draft by going to college and getting a commission. At least they were officers that, they thought it would be better. And by and large, it probably was, but it didn't didn't save them from serving in the bush, being shot at, all that kind of stuff. Didn't save them from getting killed. But at least it put it off for a little while.
Yeah, and then they had a little bit of choice probably on their destiny of like, hey, they could actually say something instead of just being told to do it. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was a little bit different. So the scene in the book takes you from me, and it's the July 4th holiday. And that's the reason why I remember, because we don't get time off in basic training unless it's a national holiday. And of course, the break was about, I think, 7 weeks in, and it was July 4th. And so we go to New York in our khakis because, of course, we didn't have any other clothing because they took it from us. So we went to New York in our khakis, and this lady out of nowhere comes up and starts cussing me out and calling me a baby killer. And I'm looking at the lady like, you don't understand, that war ended 5 years ago, right? And our involvement in it technically ended 7 years ago. Doesn't matter. So she's just ranting at me. My other two buddies are standing with me, and then she just spits on me. And with all this vigor of, now I've done my part for the anti-war effort. And I'm thinking, number one, if you could tell my rank and where I am, I wasn't in Vietnam, but that's okay.
Right.
7 years later, but it is interesting how angry people were, right? And the difference was when my kids started to serve, everybody was celebrate, doesn't matter where they serve, what they do, celebrate the soldier, don't condemn them for being there, right?
Right.
When we, in fact, were condemned for our service. Matter of fact, one of my officers, senior officers, had asked me the question. He said, "Why in the world did you join?" I know why I joined was to avoid the war, because I mean, I think he was A&M class of '67.
Hmm.
And some of the other officers I served with were class of '68 and '69. So you know where they went, right?
Right.
They got commissioned, they went to officers training and went straight to Vietnam. Um, but he was like, "Why did you join?" And well, because my family always had. My father, my grandfather, my grandfather's father. I mean, we've been serving since the Revolutionary War. And, my grandfather's buried in Arlington as a hero in World War II. I mean, it's kind of a family tradition. My son has just finished his officer's school and he's deploying too.
Right.
And, it's just kind of, I don't want to say it's a family business, but we all serve. I was a reservist, so for me, my service was semi part time for about 8 years. Other people make careers out of it. I have a cousin that served 25 years in the Marine Corps, so that's part of being. I hate to say these things because these are the things that get people, but when you're lower middle class, okay, that's what you do,
Right.
right? If you want to get out, especially my generation, you want to get out, you want to get a college education, you want to do things like that, that's how you got out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're stuck in your town.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I was talking to my parents this weekend. I was home, and we were talking about like what it costs for us to go to college, and I'm sitting there thinking about student loans and things like that. And at the time, I was 18. I couldn't really make the choice to want to do it, but like I would go back, and because of the fact of what it's costed me now, I would probably go join the National Guard. I mean, the amount of
Mm-hmm.
benefit that you get from doing that, and it'll allow you to go to college so that you could do that, so that you could do the things that you needed to do. Because there's a lot of kids, even when I was teaching, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to go in the Navy. Why? Well, I can't afford to go to college, but this will, when I get done, I can, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the way for them to get there, because college is such a business now that it doesn't even really matter. If you don't have the money, you can't go.
And it's interesting because I just finished some research for a global econ course on college, right, and the student loans. And there's this problem with these two indexes. One's called the Michigan Sentiment, and the other one's basically called the Misery Index, which is a combination of unemployment and inflation. And the Misery Index suggests that we should be extremely happy. However, the Sentiment Index shows that we're not. And what is interesting is when you look at the under 30 crowd, we're supposedly doing so well in the economy, but the under 30 crowd, only 2% say we're doing well and 59% say we're doing poor. But if you go look at their student loan debt, right, you'll
Yeah.
figure out why. They went in just 12 years, they went from about $800 billion in student loan debt to 1.7 trillion
Yeah.
in 12 years, in a little over a decade, right? Now, the good news was, as a percentage of the population, bachelor's degrees and beyond went from 30% to 37% of the population, but we spent $1 trillion getting that.
Yeah.
$1
And
trillion.
the bad thing is they don't educate you. Like I was talking to a coworker yesterday and he was telling me that he had $60,000 of his student loans forgiven, which I think is interesting because
Yep.
good for him. You know, he got it forgiven. I have, between my wife and myself, we have close to $200,000 in student loans for going to get, you know, I have my master's degree and she is a nurse. So I was a teacher, a nurse. This guy has never got a degree and has got his loans forgiven. And we both had jobs. Like my wife's been a nurse for 13, 14 years now and has not gotten hers forgiven. And I was an educator, these are the ones that like you would think they would forgive first because they have the public service forgiveness. And I mean, the thing is you have to spend 20 years paying on your loan to get that forgiveness. So if I spent 20 years paying on my loan or 10 years paying on my loan, it'd be paid off at what they're charging me to pay it right now. So what good does that do
Yeah.
me? My mom didn't even get hers forgiven and she has the same type of thing. So it's like, it's just crazy. They told us we had to do this. They told us we had to do that. The only way to get ahead is to get an education. And now even like as a teacher, starting wages in Idaho is like 43,000. It was 38 when I started. There was no way I could afford to support my family on that.
I was really lucky. My student loan debt this time around for a bachelor's or graduate certificate and a master's is 41,000.
Yeah.
I had other grants and stuff that really, carried the way, other benefits that were really, really nice. So yeah, it wasn't horrible for me. My son has more debt than I do for an undergrad,
Yeah.
right? And he's military. Now, eventually that will be forgiven. Parts of it will be forgiven, but it's not before he has to labor through what is it, like $500 a month payments
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 1% of whatever the loan rate is. So even
Yeah.
they have these programs that are like really great or whatever, but it's like, to me, it's like, okay, I've been doing this, like I've had these loans for, well, 5 or 6 years, but it's like amazing to me that how they decide to do that. It doesn't matter. The reality of the situation is we took the money. They haven't fixed the way that that's going to happen, like how people can get the money, because they should, if they require you to do a credit report and all that stuff for a house, for a car, for everything, they should not just give you money just because you signed a piece of paper. It's nuts. I mean, you should be able to have a way to pay it back.
And so the really interesting part is that my student loans exist from my first go around, which was 40 years ago, right? So I borrowed a total of, I know this is going to throw you, $4,000. Okay.
Yeah, right.
$4,000, seriously. And to put it into context, right, it cost $3,200. It cost me about $3,200 a year to go to school back when I first went. $12,000. My pay when I left school was 28.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of put that into context, right? So I'm making twice what I have in student loans. I pay my student loans off in 5 years. It was a joke. They were nothing, right?
Right.
It was $4,000. I mean, it really was. I mean, I don't even remember the payments. It was so small, right? Flip that around now. You go to work, and yeah, granted, you're making, if you're lucky, $50,000, $60,000, but you might have $100,000 worth of loans.
Right.
I'm just like,
yeah,
it's staggering.
It's crazy. Which, like this chapter kind of talks a little bit about that. Like these are the things that we see, these are the things that we hear and stuff like that. But we're talking about media and how I really, and not to just go to the bottom of the chapter, but like this is something that like really hit me this morning when I was reading it. And where is it at right here?
Percentage of people that trust the media.
Yeah, like this is let me close this experiment in changing perspectives. Okay, so this is the thing. We're talking about media and how media like pushes this narrative, and I really like when you read this, you start to really think I know that this is the way that it is, but it's crazy to think that people think that the media is worried to get the correct information, right? Like the news comes from there. It used to be like when I was growing up, it was like they have to be objective. But what if you looked at your typical news anchor or talking head as a big screen actor playing a role? How would that change your outlook on the news? So think about that. Like when these people are talking to you, you put your trust in them, or if you thought about it though, like if it was just like a movie or a TV show, would you really trust those people to tell the
Oh,
truth?
it's very true. So I watched literally the transition happen on TV. It was 1968, and Walter Cronkite had went to Vietnam after the Tet Offensive to look at the situation. And Walter Cronkite at the time was the most trusted man in America, meaning whatever he said was, just gospel. So he goes over to Vietnam and he comes back and he gets ready to do his spiel. And up in the corner, okay, by his head, it starts flashing editorial. Literally, we went from giving information to he's going to give an opinion.
Yeah.
And they coded it up in the corner, right? And he basically said at that point, we are in no position to win the war in Vietnam. And that was really the end of the Vietnam War, was when Walter Cronkite said that, because that's when the public shifted, right? But that's how different media was, meaning they would be aghast at the idea of putting opinion on there that they didn't say was opinion.
Right.
And now it's just full of bias, and it's horrible, right? But when media first started, especially TV, it was so censored. People don't realize how censored it was. There were censors in all three networks that basically said you can't put that on for national security, you can't put it on for the public good. Star Trek, the original Star Trek, right, had to be on at 9 o'clock at night because it had adult content in it. And you're thinking, where was the adult content? It had the first interracial kiss on TV.
Yeah.
That was the adult content, right? Had to be on at 9 o'clock at night. So that's 1960. So you begin to understand that there is a real erosion in the way we perceive media, and that media shouldn't be the one telling you who your heroes and your villains are.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
crazy.
Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley said one time, he said, don't use me to model anything. I don't want to be no kid's hero, right?
Yeah.
Basically, he was saying, why, just because I'm an athlete, do I become your hero? And that's the thing we have to realize, is we've created these, and we're in this culture where we love to build up our people and then tear them down again, right? It's just this cycle of, I call it, and you'll see it several times in the book, friction, meaning, the rub on sandpaper, and fiction. That's what they like. Yeah. If we can create some kind of controversy, or we can just flat lie, that's where we're at. And that's what you're letting someone build on. And that's, really, really tough. And so people wonder why they're disillusioned, because you just don't know what to believe.
Right. You create this. We've talked about this multiple times. I was talking to someone that another coworker yesterday too, about like the dating app things that we talked about, the ratings, the media, right, like all this stuff. Like people actually have issues like with Instagram, right? So Instagram came out, I don't know, a while ago, right? And the big thing was like all these people were posting these perfect pictures. And this was something that I dealt with when I was teaching middle school. Like kids have this persona of what perfect is, right? Or what you should look like. And it's all based on this false thing where these people are taking these pictures, they're photoshopping them, they're doctoring them up. Kids think that this is what they look like, and it's created an issue like in this world. Same thing with the dating app, like you were talking about. Like, I don't know who it was I was talking to, but like the persona that you create on your profile, that, most women, when they put in what they're looking for in a perfect male, they end up saying that, well, it's someone over 6 foot, it's this, it's that, it's blah, blah, blah. Well, the percentage of, once you put that in there, you have watered down what you're going to get, because how many people in this world are over 6 foot? How many men are? So it makes it look really good for the men, because now all of a sudden there's like you know, 5% of the population is over 6 foot. So that means that their choices are very small, but the guy's got many options because that's what everyone else is looking for. And then
Yeah.
it just continues to do that. So now your choices of the 5%, hoping that someone over 6 foot is going to meet the criteria of what you want in a mate. Good luck. I mean, you just start thinking
Yeah.
about life and the survival of the fittest, right? Like, what do? They're looking for the alpha male, and that's what they want. Like, the alpha male is going to be the big giant monster that can beat everyone up, right?
Yeah, we're in a tough set of expectations. It's one person called it the tyranny of expectations, right? That it's running roughshod over everything we do, and the reality is that you want a partner that you're obviously attracted to, but be realistic. I mean, attraction's a funny thing. It's not necessarily the metrics of, oh, this person's an 8.4. It's not that. It's how they are attractive to you,
Right.
right? Might be a 7 for somebody else, but for you, that's a 10. I mean, you're looking at her going, oh my gosh, that's just the perfect woman. Attitude, carry, size, whatever. And so, yeah, we've gotten into a world where the metrics have become really, really skewed.
Yeah.
Um, we've also gotten into a world where we're really, really computer dependent. And it's like whatever the computer spits out is somehow right. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like the AI thing. Somebody was like, well, I was using ChatGPT. I said, well, I let ChatGPT take a couple economics quizzes. It's a C student.
Yeah.
Just so you know, understand. I mean, some people are like, huh? It's an AI. It's all intelligent. Well, it's not. It's a C student.
Yeah. I mean, it may have more information than the average person. Like, I use it for some stuff. Like, I end up typing in, like, hey, make a, like, I'll use it for descriptions on stuff. But that's
Mhm.
pretty much it. Like, I've gone in there. The other day, I was like, this logo that I have, like, I'm trying to redesign it a little bit. So I thought, I'll download an AI app and see if I can get it to, you know, basically change Shaping Success to the Wes Tankersley Show, right? Use the same
Yeah,
font. I typed it in 9 different ways and it still could not understand what I was telling it to do. Like, it couldn't get it right.
yeah,
So I'm like, this is
yeah.
stupid. It's like, it doesn't really, it's not, it's a crutch. And that's what we're deciding that we're going to use it. My concern is that, like in Terminator 2, it's going to get more intelligent as it goes and then it's going to take over.
It's gonna go. You weren't nice to me,
Yep.
and shut your lights off in your house or something, right? It is really useful, and I told people it's really useful as a think of it as a smart Google.
Yeah.
Don't make it any more than that right now. No, that's a smart Google because you'll ask Google a question and you'll have to really fight through the search. Well, you don't have to do that with ChatGPT. You ask it a question and it will give you a better version. And then you can take that better version and go to Google with it. So I do think there's some value to it, but I shudder when people think, well, it's very, very evolved and very, very dangerous. And I'm like, a C student? I don't think it's very dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, it's as
An A
dangerous as
student
our
will.
our mid-range people.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things, though. It's something that people are going to use. Like, so many more people can do so many more things with it. So it gives the ability to a person who's below average to become average. You know.
Yeah, and again, it's there. What was the comment the other day? They were worried that we wouldn't speak languages because the AI is translating. We
Mm,
wouldn't learn languages anymore. And I said whether that was a good or a bad thing, and my answer to it was a bad thing because there's so much about what you learn about a culture through its language, right? And if you
yeah.
don't learn the language, you won't learn the culture. So I don't think that this is going to replace, people learning languages. They overestimate all the time what computers will do when they start. Like, for example, remember, you won't remember, but this way back when they basically said that what computers will do is they will lighten the load and they will cut the amount of paper that we create and it will just be seamless and beautiful. And computers have killed more trees than we ever attempted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think got the message a little backwards.
Well, and it's crazy too because there's so many different things that you can use. There's so many tools out there, but yeah, it all goes back to, hey, this is what we need. You know, like we still need a hard copy of this, or we still need this, or we need a backup of that. Like, let's make a backup of a backup. We've got the backups, but we also have the hard copies, and it's like, okay, still gonna
Well,
do
and you
it.
almost have to because you've lost things on a computer. If you've played with computers long enough, you've lost something. The first version of this book, as you know, was lost.
Yeah. Well,
And
think about
so,
that too. Like the history that we have has been written down for so long, and everything's going digital. If there's no hard copy of it, I mean, what's that movie with Denzel Washington where it's at the end of times and he's got the only copy of the Bible, but it's in his head.
oh
Like
yeah,
he had to. I
yeah,
mean, these
yeah.
are the things that we go through. Like, where's our history going to be? Where, you know, and obviously they're trying to burn our whole history down and not use it as a tool to learn from. But yeah,
Well, but that's back to that the media deciding who our heroes and villains are, right?
right.
Once again, now you're going to go back and recast history, and you're going to complain about something. Thank God I wasn't recorded, 40 years ago. Lord only knows what I would have said.
Right.
No, I'm serious. I mean,
I understand completely.
yeah, I was, and you got to do things in context. And people are thinking, well, because that's how they look at shows now, right? On
Hmm.
TV, how well have they held up? Oh, well, you couldn't have that show on today. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's just a comedy. Relax. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, I mean, we got them going back after Kevin Hart for something he said 10 years ago in a comedy show. That's a joke that you go to the comedy show to listen to people tell jokes about stuff. Like,
Right. And push the edge of the envelope, right?
yeah.
And you're not there because you're like being politically correct. You're there to enjoy comedy. You're enjoy to be universally insulted. I mean, come on, that's what happens.
No, yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, I went to Adam Carolla 6 months ago and got roasted by one of the guys just for being there. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, that's part of the show. That's the way that it
that
works. I mean, it's nuts.
that's part of the show. Yeah, and then that's the build up and the takedown of people, and people are just people.
Yeah.
What I think, who put that on there? Oh, Nikki, perfectly imperfect.
Yep.
Really good comment, but that's the truth. And we don't need to build up. And plus, the fact is, why in the world is someone a hero for being on TV?
Right.
What in the world does that make you a hero, or being in a movie?
I mean, it's as
What's
simple as
heroic
like
about that?
looking at these people. Like, if you can date someone and become super famous because you date that person, like, I mean, you look at like
Yeah,
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey. All of a sudden, Travis, the best decision he ever made because it's got him out there is that he started dating Taylor Swift, who has millions and millions of followers. It's like this is where we're going. So now, because he's got millions and millions of followers, his opinion we're going to look to and go, that's the way that it is. You know,
yeah. It's
it's
like, why, right?
yeah, and
Why?
that's just an example, but because there's so many people that are like this. Like we used to look at Twitter, and whoever said whatever they said on Twitter was true. I mean, there are people who say things, and you're just like, yeah, that's truth. Elon Musk says it, or Alyssa Milano says it. Like this is the reality of the world, and we're looking at these people. And if you vote for Trump, you're a racist. If you vote for Biden, I mean, there's all these different things that these people say that are true because they have had a minute of fame. They didn't
Yeah,
actually do the
yeah.
real research.
No, no, and that's one of the pains of things. Again, I was talking to a friend, and they quoted something to me, and I said, "Do you know that's actually not true?"
Hmm.
And they went, "How do you know?" I said, "Well, I actually researched it." Why? Well, because I took a class and I was forced to read it and research it and go back to the original Greek and all that kind of stuff, and I realized it's not true. I said it sounds good, but it's
Right.
just not true. And you don't realize how much is carried through in media that you just take as gospel. And so there's a great passage, and I'll bring out the Bible, right? This is Jesus before Pilate, and Pilate says to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus' response was, "Do you know this for yourself, or did someone else tell you?" Well, it has spiritual implications, right? Like, in other words, you know because of the spirit, but it really has implications on everything we do in life, right?
Right.
Do you know this for yourself or did someone tell you? What have you experienced for yourself?
Yeah.
And what do you think you've experienced because you've watched a movie, right?
Exactly.
Or someone's told you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's to that, and we'll end here, but like I think like the convolution of the whole situation. You think about that game telephone. We're standing in the lunch line and we're playing the game telephone. It starts out that in the beginning, the first person says I like pizza, and it comes out to at the end to something completely different that you know so and so has a girlfriend or whatever. Like I mean it's so distraught with what that story comes through because as it comes through person to person to person to person, it changes the meaning so many times that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we expect that word of mouth is very important in our culture. There's absolutely no question. It's important. But we have to realize by the time it gets to us how many translations it may have went through.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you got to go back and look, and you have it at your fingertips. You can Google it. If someone tells you something and you take it at face value, you better make sure it's a reliable source, and you better do some of your own research.
Yeah, and Google's really particularly bad, right? Because a
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine got shingles, right?
Yep.
Multiple times. Opens up Google, hits causes of shingles. First thing that comes up is HIV,
Yeah.
AIDS. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, and she's a little bit of, can be a little sensitive on health issues. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to talk the woman off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
That's just dumb,
Well, and that's the
right?
thing. Like you look at that 90% of what you say with the first like when you Google something, think about Siri. Like if you ask Siri a question, do you get the answer right the first time every time? When you Google something, the first thing that pops up is sponsored. That means that someone is paying to have their stuff at the top so that's the first thing that you click. And if you click on sponsored, it's not going to be right. It just means that someone paid to get it up there.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, there Nikki sent in there, never research your medical status. That is really true because you don't have any background and you're reading something, right, that you get and you don't have any idea. And it's not like you're getting it from the National Institute of Health either, like you said, right?
Right.
You're getting the sponsor version.
Even
You
then,
know,
like that's a bad, like like this COVID thing. We're taking the word of the CDC for it, which who is, I mean, you really got to figure out. It's like articles, right? What's more,
yeah,
what makes more sense? An article that you just read online that doesn't have a .gov after it or a dot whatever, that's not peer reviewed, or that is peer reviewed where people have actually done the research and had to look into it and figure it out. And even then, it's maybe wrong, but at least
right,
they've done a little research.
right. No, I mean, don't get it wrong. Peer review gets it wrong a lot,
Yeah,
but like you said, at least there's a standard.
right.
Right? And you can understand why peer review got it wrong as opposed to somebody in the PR business saying, "Hey, this sounds like a really good idea."
Yeah. Not things that they'll teach us in class, though.
No, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, it's been a good one, Robert. I think. What do we have? One more? We have one more maxim, or is there
No,
14?
that's it.
Okay, so we're into the book. We're into the next one is going to be frame of mind.
Yes.
The book is on Amazon. You can get it. Check it out, and we'll put the links in the notes again, and we'll be back again next Wednesday.
Look forward to it.
All right. All right, everyone. Have a good day, and we will see you soon.